I want to call the meeting to order for March 13th, 2023. First on our agenda tonight is the tech school. And I am sorry, you've been to every one of my meetings and
No problem. It's Rick Martin. I'm the school superintendent director for Franklin County Technical School. And with me on Zoom, I have Russ Cobris, our business manager, and Liz Bouchard, our assistant to the business manager. So they should be online as well. I'd like to present the budget as it relates in general, but then I'm gonna really make sure that we understand where we are with Northfield, the assessment, the per pupil expenditures, and how it impacts, and how we are going to project it for next year, and then we can get an idea where we're at. So without further ado, could I share my screen on the Zoom? Is that okay?
Are you able to do that from where you're sitting right now?
I certainly can,
Okay.
but the host disabled participation screen sharing, so you would have to enable that.
I'm sorry, you want me to do what?
You would have to enable screen sharing.
Okay.
So I think you have to go to your picture, there should be 3 dots to the right, and you click it and it will say enable screen sharing, I believe.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
it's Andrea.
Why can't I find myself on here? What did I do?
Participant.
I'm really down over here.
Okay.
I have no idea I can't find what you're talking about, I'm sorry.
Enable
I don't
screen sharing.
We have the technical person that probably try to help you out a little bit.
You may have gotten an hit
small
with
arrow.
somebody asking to
If
join.
you
That's
mouse
me.
over and see the share screen at the bottom middle of your ribbon, there should be a little small arrow.
Yeah?
It has a couple of additional options, and one of those may be allow screen sharing.
I'm sorry, where on the bottom? Oh wait, by
Your bottom ribbon with the green share screen
Yep.
icon,
Yep.
there's a small arrow accompanying that has a list of sub options, and one of those may be to allow others to share screen.
Yep, I just put that on. Multiple participants can share simultaneously, right? Does that sound like it? That's what I just clicked
I
on,
think
see if
that's
you can
it.
share them.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Okay, so now click out of that screen.
People got to mute.
That was me.
I may just have to click out of that and you're good. On the far right, just go to the X. Go up to the top and go X. There you go.
Who, me?
Yep.
Now you have a terrible echo.
Yeah, I know.
It's both of your microphones being on.
Take your microphone.
I don't have
On screen? Oh, you get feedback.
They can hear my microphone.
TV remote?
I'm muted.
I think that's the heater though.
What am I doing?
That's okay. Okay. So, your microphone is on, sir. It's okay if it is. I'm just confirming.
I don't think so.
My thing is showing that the only mic that's on Zoom is yours.
Mine, I am muted.
Really? Mine should be turned off, okay. Go do that.
Adventure.
Oh, here it is. Here, I'll get it.
You're hooked around. There you go.
All right, go ahead.
Who, me?
Anybody in general?
Hello.
People in the meet?
I'll unmute myself so the people online can hear. Okay, testing. I'll mute myself.
Doesn't sound good.
Well,
is the feedback from the TV?
Actually. Yeah, it's
You
the
thought it was gonna be
TV's
easy time.
audio going back into the microphone being used in the room. So I think your microphone can be on. Yours doesn't need to be.
Okay.
So I can put my,
And they'll still be able to hear me on Zoom.
Microphone.
Yes, because the mic,
Yeah, got it.
the mic that everybody in the Zoom is hearing is
Yep.
that.
Okay, so that sounds good.
so Tyler, I should unmute?
Unmute your mic, not your speakers. If that makes sense. Yes,
Oh,
unmute your mic.
okay. That's not my area of audio expertise.
That's okay.
Okay, then the other thing is you want to take that off the screen that you have there. Just X out on that one.
Oh, okay.
And let's just
Okay.
give it one more test with people in
The,
here.
the feedback is gone,
Okay. And you can hear us?
loud and clear.
How about myself? Can you hear Dan Campbell?
We can hear you and the echo is gone.
Good, okay. Don't put that in the minutes, please, that we had technical difficulties.
Yes,
Okay,
Alright.
backing up a little bit.
Okay, so we're gonna present a budget that will show the town assessments for the town of Northfield, the student per pupil expenditures, where we are with enrollment, and where we are overall in our general budget. When we're gonna be voting on this budget, our school committee meeting on March 15th, this Wednesday. And when we have a positive vote on the budget, we will be sending you an electronic copy as well as a hard copy. So just to navigate, it's a really easy budget to navigate through. So when it comes complete with a table of contents, so if you go to uses of funding and sources of funding, which is our face sheet, this is how we receive our money. Anything highlighted in blue, you would just click on, and it will take you to a narrative and a descriptor to explain that particular piece. So the assessment to the towns, as you can see, a 5-year trend, starting at 6.1 million and going up to 6.7 million over 5 years, is approximately a 3% increase per year. When we go to the assessments of towns and we click on the blue, it will take you to an explanation of just what I was kind of saying already. And then if you needed some more information on regional guidance, you could click down the other link. We're not going to go through all the links today, it'd take too long. I'm going to get right back to the sources of funding. Table of contents for per pupil expenditures. You can see the town of Northfield is already highlighted in yellow. And you have 40 students, and your per pupil expenditure is $16,268. And that's, if you wanted to see a trend on the next one, you can take a look at that. That's where you've been trending. You're up 12 students from the previous year. Now, when we look at that in its history, just in a short, 8-9 year history, I'm going to scroll right to that right now so we get to take a look at that. That would be up above. It's in the table of contents, but I'm not going to be flipping around through everything. When we look at this for the town of Northfield over 9 years, you can see you're kind of in a curve. Back in 2015, we had 42 enrolled, and prior to that, we were in that range. Then we took a dip, and then in 2000, really this year is when we started to go back up to where we were previously. Now the 43 you see on the far right is based on 7 Northfield seniors graduating. We have 10 applications so far. So if you take away the 7 from the 40, that's 33. Add 10, that's 43. That's our projection for next year. When we did this with you last year, we said you would be up anywhere between 10 and 12, maybe a little higher, and it ended up being 12. So we like to tell you a year ahead of time so you can prepare for the assessments. Because that's what's going to drive any increase is the cost per pupil and the number of students that we have. So when I go back to the, every right-hand corner will always go back to your table of contents or your sources of funding. So if I go back to debt service, this is just our MSBA windows, doors, paving project we had for a number of years. 1 year, 8 of that. There's a chart for that. If you press this, how much is it for Northfield? I'll highlight that right now, and you can see for Northfield, it is right here. and I'll just click it on. So you'll see that would be your assessment, 11,432. We anticipate over the next 7 years of the life of this bond, that assessment will go up and down hundreds of dollars, not thousands of dollars. And this was lower than the previous year, so it kind of goes up and down. That's beyond our control as well. Chapter 78. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Chapter 78, and if anyone in the community want to learn more about it, you just click on the blue. It gives you a quick paragraph, tells you where to get all your information from. If you clicked any outside source from the Department of Education, it will tell you about foundation budget and what have you. So that's just a quick little link for everybody. You go to the far left-hand column, get back to sources of funding. This is the DOR cherry sheet. Very interesting because all of your towns that are associated with your assessment, whether you're in Leiden or Irving or whatever the towns are, you can look up exactly what the allocation is from the state. And this you can use just not for our budget, but for any budget. So you would go to the DOR cherry sheet, and it clicks on here. You'll see that number is exactly what's in our budget. That's how much we're getting allocated. That's how much we put in our budget. Same thing for regional transportation. That's how much we're getting allocated in our budget. How do I find that information? You click down here to the bottom to the Department of Revenue, and it will take you to a little sheet where you just go here and you click down to whatever school you're looking for. In this case, we'll look for Franklin County Tech. I press submit, and those numbers I just showed you, they're right here. That's how we get them. So that's a transparency to that budget. That's exactly how we're getting our money and our reimbursements in that. One of the, let's go back here to sources of funding. One of the things that is a concern is that we look at the regional transportation line item, which is the next one. You notice the previous year we were 801,000, and this year, although we have more students, and another bus, we're down to 739,000. So we don't know what that's going to look like when July rolls around. The governor's final numbers come. They indicate that it's a 90% reimbursement. We're right around 75%. So there's a disconnect there. I think what they did at the governor's level is make sure that they were conservative in their estimates, and then they'll see where they are in July. So we anticipate that number going back up to where it might be, which right now, when you look at that number, we are paying out of our operating budget $400,000 to offset regional transportation, which is why we need to make sure that our excess and deficiencies down here is able to offset the entire budget when you go down to that. So that's where we are with that. Our non-member towns are those who do not belong to the district but pay substantially more per pupil to come to our school, and we take that money to offset the operating budget. And our tuition from pre-employment program right here is our self-contained. That's we usually have about 12 to 15 students in that program. We currently only had 9 the last 2 years, so we don't have the extra students to take out of that. I just needed to show a trend. Other revenues is explained. If you just click that, that's your Medicaid reimbursements. And that's how we would receive all of our money at just a little over $15 million. And now I'm going to turn this next section over to Russ. But before I do that, I wanted to highlight a couple of things. He's going to take how we use our money, which is the usage of funding, and then we'll go right into the Northfield assessments, and we'll be done in about 10 minutes. So just want to give you a time frame so we don't have this big monologue. We want to get right to the point. So as far as the second, how we use our funding, as you're probably aware by now, we started a veterinary science program. And the benefit of that for what's been beneficial for some of our communities is that instead of paying the full $50,000 plus to send a student to Smith Voc for various animal science type programs, they're now staying in district for whatever their per pupil cost is, saving the towns a substantial amount of money. And so occasionally a town will have a student that goes over there, and we're trying to develop programs to help keep them where they belong right here in the county. And so that program is going to be operational in the fall of next year. And
Is that requiring a new building, or you?
a new building.
So that would be another capital expense coming down the road?
No, we were able to fund it within our current operating budget. We have students that do a lot of work. We have that availability, which really helps diminish the cost drastically. So we are at a 4,800 square foot facility. It's already up. The interior should be done this summer, and we should have it grades 9 through 12 in there for the veterinary science program. We started the program 4 years ago. It's a fully enrolled program, and so we are excited about that opportunity. The next thing that we did, and all the equipment, the supplies and materials that came into that program were done through a competitive grant. So not from the operating budget and not from the taxpayers. The same can be said for our new aviation program, which is on the rise, pun intended. We are trying to get that off the ground. There's another bad one. So as far as where we are with that, we just received the grant a couple of months ago. We've already purchased the steel for the building. We have already purchased a few airplanes. We're looking at getting all the other equipment and a helicopter and getting that so that our students are walking out of that program as the best high school aviation program in the country. We have a consultant that's going to help us be able to get there. The students will walk out with an FAA approved aviation mechanic technician's license, and they will also have the benefit of avionics in that particular program. So it's going to be built on the airport. We share 8,000 feet with the airport, so we're going to build it 20 feet onto the airport property. It's going to be a 12,000 foot hangar, and then the program is expected to start up in the fall of 2024. So when you see some of our increased expenses, those are the things that we're putting our dollar with, because when that happens, when you are able to build something, the students will come. And that's been our philosophy. And the last thing that we are doing from an expense standpoint is we received a $660,000 grant to start an evening adult learning program. So this fall we started our we started our mechanic shop for the evening program for our auto technology program, and we started a welding one for our adults. And now we're going into carpentry, and we're going to be venturing into other avenues as well. So we're going to continue the growth of our evening programs. We also have a self-contained electrical program for our adult learners, and we're trying to work that way into a licensed, credentialed environment to get adult learners in the area to get credentialed and be able to get into the workforce. So that's something new for us. That's something we haven't done. So that's going to be represented in this budget as well. So when Russ goes over how we're using our funding, you'll see some of those increased costs. All right, so Russ, if you want to take it from here.
Well, before you go to that, I have just one quick question as far as
Yep.
on how do you go about increasing the population of your school? I know you got 19 different towns that you deal from.
19, yep.
Is there a percentage of students that you look for from each town? Because I remember a few years ago there was a percentage that you looked at to draw from each district, or and is that still the same?
Yep, I can point you right to that actually.
Okay.
It's a good, I'll just scroll to it, I know where it is, so instead of going through a table of contents and boring everybody, I'll go right to it. And that is right up here. That's this little chart here. So this will take me less than a minute to explain.
Okay.
So here where we are at 2022-23, where my arrow is, we had 602 total available 8th graders in Franklin County.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
That orange marker indicates the number of students who enrolled in Franklin County, 163. Right? At a percentage, you see here at 27%. If we maintain that 27% throughout the foreseeable future, right? This is the catchment area that it goes from 602 to 586 to 617 to 5. And where am I getting those numbers from? I go right down here, you click, and it will take you right to all of the various towns, schools. You get your numbers, you individually go in and you take those numbers out so you make sure they're accurate. so I can project out accurately, because if they're gonna decline a lot, I wanna know if I need to do staff reductions or if they're going to go up, make new programs. So here's that chart. One thing that's interesting about that chart, we're actually percentage-wise taking less students now than we did back in 2015-16 when the catchment area was 662 and only 132 enrolled. We had 154 applicants. When we go to the 163, we had 280.
So again, what's your rate of refusal? Do you turn kids away, or you haven't had to do that?
We have a small waiting list. I mean, very small. I think we had 10 or 12 on our waiting list. So it's not a substantial waiting list, and that's like an ebb and flow. Most of the kids, may not move on to the 8th grade. So even though they apply, we'll have that happen, or they fail a course that they have to go back and take a summer class that they then don't bother coming back to. So we have a lot of that as well. So there's some fluctuation there. So that grid kind of tells us kind of where we are from a percentage standpoint and where we're gonna go out. Now, there's one point I should make. And when you're looking at that 163 and you're seeing the enrollment kind of fluctuate right around there until you hit 2027, 28, and then it goes down if we take the same exact percentage, which we are inclined to do. That's not counting our new programs, in which we started Aviation Center. That's already drawing substantial interest from all over the place. So that enrollment will then be added on. And that's probably coming from out of district or some in district. So those numbers may be more stable than they look here, but we don't have that factually yet, because those students, may be coming from communities that are non-member towns and paying at a higher rate. So that's where we are with that end of it. And I'll get right back to the sources of funding. Does that answer?
It does, but
Yeah.
before we move on, as far as, does anybody have any questions on what has been presented at this time?
I think that, if I'm remembering correctly, and I think it's what part of what Dan was talking about, the number of students from each town, was there a percentage or that the tech school could accept from each town?
Good question. So what we have is, in our regional agreement, we have what we call a quota. And we do a quota formula for each of the towns. None of our towns have reached the quota as of this. Our capacity is 672. So our overall in-district enrollment, if I can just get to that chart, that might really help. Our in-district enrollment is, and this might help explain the question, let me find that in-district enrollment right here. So if we look at where we are right now, our October 1 count is 559. Our next year projection is 572. We are basing that on 126 graduates and 160 incoming freshmen. So we can get an idea of 572, realizing some of those freshmen are out of district students and won't go in our in-district numbers. We have in our regional agreement quotas for each town. If those numbers are over those quota figures, then in our regional agreement it says that those towns that have not reached the quota, we can utilize those empty spots to be able to fill those other towns.
That's what I understand, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly
And that's
right.
how I explained it to somebody that asked me today, so I
Yeah,
feel comfortable with what I said then.
yeah. And I'll get back to the sources of funding. Any other questions on that top half of the screen? Okay, I'll turn the bottom half on the screen over to our business manager, Russ.
Hello, folks. Thank you for having me on via Zoom tonight. As Rick explained, we've got a just over $15 million budget, and which is roughly up $650,000 from last year. Total budget. Our assessments to towns went up on average only 3%. Obviously, with Northfield, that's driven by enrollment, so your assessment is up close to 40%, I guess, is where you're at. The bottom part of the screen, so this is our appropriations. This is how we spend the money. And if you look at line 2, instructional services, you'll see a $400,000 jump in instructional services. So all of these costs down here in the bottom part of the screen are enrollment driven. Our enrollment has increased by over 20% in the last 5 years. So we're up almost 100 students in the high school from where we were 5 years ago. So obviously we need more teachers in front of the students' faces. So that's the instructional services. Coming out of COVID with student discipline problems and trying to add other supports, we added a dean of students to the administrative level. Again, as you add teachers, you need supervision also, so the administrative level bumped up a little bit this past year to handle the additional teachers and students. Student services and other things, pupil transportation, we're anticipating having to add an extra bus route. So over a couple of years, we've bumped those budgets up. The good news is, even though enrollment is driving some of these costs up, the enrollment is also driving Chapter 70 aid to us. So the state is participating in a bigger share than they ever have in Franklin County Tech's budget. So that's how we can maintain a low 3% average increase to our member town assessments. So the biggest thing I want to point out on the bottom part of the screen is you'll notice lines 10 and 11. So line 10 was our Siemens Building Technologies performance contract. It was a 15-year lease that we did to get brand new rooftop units, help the circulation of air in our building, insulate the building, etc. That particular lease ends at the end of this fiscal year, so we don't need the $500,000 worth of funds anymore. But what Superintendent Martin and I did is we moved those funds down to capital stabilization. So we pumped that up from a $250,000 ask in the current budget cycle to a $750,000 ask for the FY24 budget cycle. And the reason for that is we are in the pipeline to do, at least study, a brand new vocational technical building for Franklin County. So if you look at all the other schools in Franklin County, all the other high schools, they're all newer than ours. We're one of the last soldiers out there, last to come to the party. So the MSBA, Mass School Building Authority, has allowed us into the pipeline. So the first step of an MSBA project, now we are expecting the state will give us, we're hoping 80 cents on a dollar if we can qualify through the MSBA program. The first step in a project of any size, and I'm sure you guys experience this when you do larger buildings on the town side, is you need to do a feasibility study. So that required study, they're telling us is going to be in the neighborhood of $1 million to $1,250,000 to study what we need for a building, what's the right size for this county, for the vocational education in this county, etc. So what Rick and I did is we moved some of the operating funds at $500,000 down to capital stabilization. We're going to put the money in capital stabilization, and then when it comes time for the feasibility study, which will probably be next year at the earliest, but we really think it's probably going to happen the following fiscal year. And by the time that happens, we will have enough money to pay for the feasibility study without having the town's vote to go out to do a small bonding to help with a feasibility study. Eventually, if we get to dance with the MSBA and get a full project going, then we would approach the 19 towns to ask if they could contribute towards a bonding for a brand new building. The reason why I keep saying brand new building is Rick was informed of this from the MSBA. Vocational technical schools, they don't like to renovate. A lot of our square footage space has changed over the years for safety, OSHA reasons and other things. So most likely it's going to be a tear down of the current building and a rebuild of a new building. Luckily we have plenty of room on the campus, so the new building can go up while we're still occupying this building. But right now, until the feasibility study happens, we don't have any numbers to share with you, to share with the capital improvement committee of our member towns or anything like that. The feasibility study will give us the schematic design to a building that will at least then start to ballpark figures of what the whole cost of this will be. In the interim, we're gonna reach out to some of our non-member towns to see if they wanna join the district. Now would be the time for some non-member towns to join. We do have the majority of Franklin County towns, but there are still a handful out there in Franklin County that send students here that aren't members, and we have some from over by Amherst and that way that send students regularly. So we'll see if other towns want to participate in a new building project. So that's pretty much it on the, Rick and I will gladly answer any questions you all have on any of the items presented, but it is expenditures are enrollment driven, just like the revenue side was enrollment driven. And we're using every square footage of the current space that we can. We don't have an assembly hall anymore. We have 4 classrooms with modified walls put in there. Rick explained we're doing outbuildings, so the veterinary science center will be an outbuilding that we're building. That'll add some current square footage, but we are in desperate need of more square footage as the demand for vocational technical high school is increasing rapidly here over the last few years. So flip it back to you, Rick.
Yeah, so a lot of things Russ was talking about, if you ever wanted to hear that again, you just click on anything in blue and it will describe it for you, and it will go through that whole entire process. The only thing I just want to highlight with some of that $750,000 won't be used right now for a feasibility study. We still have problems in our own school. A few months back, we might have had to shut down our entire building for almost a month if we didn't already purchase an electrical switchgear to have on standby when the one that there's 11 of them and one of them failed. We plugged it in, we were back in business about 24 hours later, which could have been a month later. So of course we're going to continue to buy more of those because we know that this new building won't be realized for 5 to 7 more years. And so we still have things falling apart and we want to make sure we can still run a building. So there's those kind of balancing acts that will go on continuously out of the capital stabilization. So with that, you see our uses of funding and our sources of funding. We'll gladly take any questions you might have.
I guess you have sent over, I would say guesstimates what our assessment would be.
Yep.
How close is that? Excuse me. Think that's fairly close to what
Yeah.
the end? Okay.
Yeah. That's
Pretty-
very, very close.
Okay.
Yeah.
The final figures will be in after you vote the budget.
Right. The final
Right.
governor's
Wednesday.
numbers come out in July, but we don't anticipate this being. It has our past trends of what we present at this meeting in February, March of each year is pretty consistent with what it's been all along.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for
Yeah,
coming.
thank you.
Again, a lot of knowledge. We appreciate that, and we'll be looking forward to the final figures so that we can look at it and make any kind of recommendations to our select board.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Emergency service.
Hi there. I don't have on screen, but I have handouts. If you take 2 of those and pass them around. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Thank you for coming. You probably know something about this anyway, right?
2 sheets, yes.
There you go. Whoa.
Good evening. My name is Tony DeLuzio. I'm with Collier's Project Leaders. And with me online tonight is Mr. Matt Sturz, also of Collier's. And we represent the Northfield Emergency Services Facility building, working with the building committee over the past few years, at least with Collier's. But I think I've actually been involved with several iterations of this building committee over the past 6 or 7 years. This is the furthest the project has gotten to the point that we have a full set of design documents, construction documents, which are out on the street for bidding at this point. You have a financial status report, which is a very detailed report, of everything that goes into this project from construction through what we call soft costs: furniture, fixtures, equipment, architects, engineers, owner, project managers, contingency, everything that you see on the left-hand side of the column, or left-hand side of the sheet rather. We've given this information along with the projected cash flow, which is this bar chart sheet, showing the expenditures that would be projected if the project is approved quarterly through the construction period ending in Q3 of 2024. As we know the project today, we are out to bid. As I said, we've pre-qualified contractors, which is a state requirement. We did that over the past 4 or 5 weeks. Those bidders now know that they are pre-qualified. The plans are available to them. We actually have what's called a pre-bid conference coming up on Wednesday this week. That's a virtual meeting of the contractors where they've now looked at the drawings. They can come to a conference call with Colliers and Kalo Beanick, the architect for the project, ask any questions they may have before they start their bidding process. We expect to have bids in hand before the special town meeting and before a town meeting in April and May. So these numbers will change. Right now they're based on 2 estimates. Independent estimators take the set of drawings, they go off in a vacuum so they're not talking with each other. They come up with an estimate for the construction piece, that $11 million number that you see there. We then bring those estimators together in what's called a reconciliation meeting, and we make sure that they're each looking at the same square footage of ceiling tile, floor tile, toilet fixtures, everything that goes into the building. So we want to make sure they're seeing apples to apples on the drawings. We work with the design team. They've been to the site. They know what the site features are. They know what the site constraints are. And we bring them together for a reconciled number. And that would be that $11,700,000 number. Why I say that may change is because they're estimators. They're not actually bidding the project. We will get, over the next 4 weeks, filed sub-bid numbers, which are subcontractors, if you will. Plumbers, HVAC, electrical, drywall, paint, all the trades that go into it. We get all those numbers first. We give them to the general contractors through the state process. They in turn package it up with their numbers and will give us a true hard bid. At that point, we'll be able to change these numbers to reflect the actual bid cost. Currently, we have this information working through Andrea, through Unibank, and through the town's insurer, so that we're working on what insurance is going to cost for this through the builder's risk policy, what the town should carry for insurance. We have those limits. Your insurance carrier has already given us what those limits would be. We don't have the final cost on what that policy would be. Right now, there's a portion of that factored in here, but again, that number may fluctuate a little. We don't currently have the information back from Unibank on the borrowing cost, unless it's in Andrea's email while she's away. I have not seen that, but we've been directly communicating with, I believe, David.
It's a 30-year
from
loan, is
Unibank.
that what it's going to be?
It's a 30-year note, yep.
I've actually been emailing with David Eisenthal, so he's working on the numbers
Thank
to
you.
give us some.
So we do predict that this is about 14, 15-month construction project. What you'll note from this cash flow sheet is $880,969 in actual. So we've been spending money through the town's previous appropriation to get to where we are. So that borrowing, as the note says on the right-hand side of that sheet, whatever you're borrowing at this point, would not be what you've already paid out. So there'll be some reduction out of the total project cost predicted at $15,965,000. You will have already committed and paid out about $1,400,000. So that would be taken off the loan or the borrowed amount moving forward.
14,500,000.
Yeah. The only other thing I would want to highlight for you is down the bottom of the financial status report, section 6, contingencies. Everybody that goes into a project of this magnitude has contingencies. You are carrying a total of $1,700,000 in contingencies. So whether it's estimators or we're talking about furniture, fixtures, soft costs, we're all trying to predict what escalation is going to be next year. You wouldn't be buying furniture for probably a year from now. Are the prices of metal desks and laminates going up, down, sideways? We just don't know. So it's prudent for everybody to predict those contingencies. But that would also be an area where you would say there's some potential savings there. We go into these projects, we want you to understand what that contingency is. We recommend that you carry it and plan for it, but we all work very hard not to spend all the contingency money. So that kind of covers contingency. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
So a lot of times, a project's on time, on budget. So is there anything in there that it doesn't come in on time? Is there a penalty?
So there is.
Okay.
We build into the contract. We're working with Kopelman and Page,
Okay.
who is the town's legal team.
Counsel, yeah.
Yep. And we've worked on many projects with Kopelman and Page. Right now, there's $1,000 a day, what's called liquidated damages. So if the architect, the OPM, if this team needs to stay in place because the contractor's running late, you would use those funds to absorb any cost. If you were, renting a temporary space for somebody and you had to have that cost in there, we would bill that in. There really isn't a lot of inherent lease costs, rental costs that the town would be subject to if the contractor runs late. But there are out-of-pocket costs for the contracts that you have.
Any questions on anything that's gone?
Well, historically, the estimations and the actual bid, how close does it usually run?
So historically, they're within a couple of percent.
Okay.
And they've been really good up until the pandemic.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of pipeline issues, supply chain, all the things that you hear about everywhere else in the world. Electrical generators are very hard to get. Electrical switchgear is very hard to get. Rooftop HVAC equipment for bigger projects. There's a lot of extremely long lead times and cost fluctuations. We just bid a month ago, I'll say, a $60 million, we had two estimators, same kind of thing. Large school for the city of Fitchburg Elementary School, $62 million. Both estimators were 63, 64. We went through that process, kind of settled in on 62 million. And the bids actually came in under 60 million.
Oh, that's good.
So what I take from that is not hungry contractors, because contractors aren't really hungry out there. There's a lot of work. Actually, in most of the bid, sub-bid contractor work, we were not able to get 3 or more bids in each category, which tells you the story that the electricians, the plumbers, the HVAC, all those people are all very busy with very large projects and couldn't bid another project. However, what we do take from that is that our estimators, who are very cautious and looking at, geez, is it 6% this year? Is it 8%? Their estimating tends to be higher, and our numbers are coming in better. So is that a guarantee that our bids are going to come in lower? It's not a guarantee. but it's a prediction of what's happening in the market right now, where estimators seem to be pushing the higher side of what's going to happen with inflation and with the economy, and our contractors are not that aggressive. They're still taking reasonable anticipation because they're giving you a bid number today. They're locked in. They may not be buying, let's say drywall. If we award this project in May, they're probably not buying drywall until next January, unless they're locking it in early. They're taking the risk on whether that price goes up or down. The estimators tend to estimate a little bit more conservatively. If you're an estimator, you don't always want to have the bids coming in higher than your estimate. That indicates you're a bad estimator, right? Whereas if you can say, oh, they're always a couple of percent lower, those are the estimates that you want to have, because you want to have that protection going into the bid.
Any other questions? B, since you're here, do you have any questions?
No, I was attuned to the, did you say around 15 million as the total project cost?
15,965.
965, okay. So that's lower than what we expected, right?
Yes, we've been working hard. I will say the committee's been working extremely hard to reduce square footage, and just in the past, I'd say month, through working with their communications vendors and Shelburne State Police, which does the dispatching, we've actually found that we can eliminate the radio tower. So this project had planned in it about 100-foot radio tower that would need to be erected on site, furnished and installed and erected on site, and that's now come out of the project. So there'll be a few smaller antennas on the roof, but that was a significant savings. It just occurred, I want to say, in the last month. So we continue to fight through the project to get the number as reasonably as we can.
Excellent. Again, any questions? Thank you. Appreciate you coming as far as doing explaining it to us and giving us a heads up on what's going on.
You're welcome. I did email these to Andrea. I'm not sure if you need me to email them. Bernie, you were on copy. So
Yeah,
they are
Johnny.
available if you want to share them.
If
Electronic.
Andrea gets it, send it to me and I will send it out to the rest of the people in the committee.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We don't have a 7 o'clock. I just put that in there just in case. We can move on to review of minutes, and the minutes that are under review would be March 6th and February 27th. We'll take February 27th first. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to accept the Finance Committee meetings minutes for the meeting that occurred on February 27th, 2023.
Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Unanimous. Moving on to the next set of minutes. I'd like to entertain a motion for March 6, 2023 draft minutes.
I make a motion, we accept those minutes as written.
Thank you, David. Do I hear a second?
I second that motion.
Bernie, seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, Dan Campbell.
Aye,
Not
Tony
aye.
Mateo.
Aye, David McCarty.
Aye, Sue Kuzinski.
And I, Bernie Parada.
Unanimous again. Thank you very
Mr. Chair,
much.
do you want me to note the roll call in the minutes?
Since you're here, I just went back on that because Zoom, we have a couple of people. I think Andrea's still zooming in just because of that, but
So is that a yes?
no, you don't. Just it was unanimous anyway. So it's
Okay.
yeah.
Well,
So
because sometimes with roll call, when I'm taking it for other department or other committees and boards, when it doesn't matter.
if you are
roll call
here,
is given,
yeah,
I
yeah,
notice, so
yeah.
that's your preference.
yeah. If you are here, I don't see a need. But if you're not, I'll try to do that.
Okay,
for your benefit, so
thank you.
you're very welcome. Any meetings attended that we should hear about, that we haven't already heard about?
Nope.
The only thing is I have a meeting to take place on Wednesday for the Emergency Services Building Committee meeting. That will be available on Zoom and that's about it. I've attended no other meetings.
Andrea, you're still here?
I am.
Is there anything that you'd like to add to town administrator updates?
I can just say that I've got pretty much all the budgets as of today. I think I've got the FERCog, the final voted numbers. We've got the schools. We don't have the certified school, but they pretty much guaranteed us that that's their number. They sent me the breakdown on the capital. So this week I'm going to send you the budget with a narrative explaining kind of everything you've got and certainly what my recommendations are for your discussion and for your decision next Monday on the 20th, and then we would take that, I will take what you guys decide on the 20th to the select board for their review on the 21st. This week I've pretty much spent my time doing the warrant. I want to get that into the attorney, even though it's subject to change based on what you want to recommend. The warrant language doesn't have the numbers in it, but I want that warrant language to be reviewed and any comments from the attorney so that it is legally ready to go. And I'm working on the warrant for the special because that will be a separate document for the special town meeting, which has to do with the financing of the project.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I've been focusing.
The date for the special, do you have that yet?
Right now, if everything works out, because we still have several things in play, we're still waiting for the Conservation Commission meeting on Wednesday for that. The planning board has a site plan review on the 22nd, and the ZBA has a variance on the 28th. If all of those go off with minor, changes that they might have to make based on recommendations of those committees, and we're looking at receiving the bids when we receive them, then the estimated date right now for the special town meeting, there'll be a presentation prior to that, but it will be the same night, would be April 19th. We've got a backup of the following week, should anything go awry, and we're not able to make the date of the 19th, but that's pretty much the drop dead date, the 25th or 26th.
Yeah, because it has to be posted 2 weeks in advance.
Correct, so I'm
Okay.
hoping the select board would be signing it right about the 4th of April, that's why it's going to the lawyers now. We have special legal counsel for this project, so that's actually reviewed by a different lawyer, because we have a financial advisor and we have bond counsel, because this is a borrowing, so the language is a little different. So working with both of those right now. And David Eisenthal, who works for Unibank, he is our financial advisor. We really decided to go ahead and do the financing possibility off of the total 15,965 cost, even though we don't anticipate that's what your borrowing would be. We do want to see what that cash flow over 30 years would look like, so that we would know what the payment would be each year, and then we can estimate how that will affect the town's budget. Presumably affect the town's budget a little bit going forward. It's hard because each year you go out, it's less and less predictable based on revenues, values of the town, and other expenditures. But we do want to at least have a pretty good sense of the first year or two. The other thing to remember is the borrowing won't hit this year. You don't pay the borrowing until sometime after you actually close the project. Think about when you build a house. You do interim borrowing, you do temporary borrowings. Those will happen over the course of this project until the final end, when the project will roll into a bond and a permanent borrowing, which means that the following year, fiscal year, depending on when all this, could be the first year that we actually make a payment. So even though it looks like we might start construction, if this all went through and we started construction this year, you would not be bonding this project probably until fiscal 25, the next year, and then the payment wouldn't come in any earlier than that. So, but we need to make sure that we're concise with our budget, conservative with our budget, so that we're not running up the costs, so that a couple of years from now, people don't see, a huge spike in the taxes when we could have maybe made some conservative decisions. So that's part of what I'll talk about in my budget narrative as to why you might want to consider recommending and not recommending some funding options that have been presented to you.
Okay.
So that's pretty much where I'm at right now, working mostly on that project.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Quick question for Andrea. You mentioned the Concom is meeting this coming Wednesday. Do you know what time?
I think you posted it.
Okay.
Yeah, 7
Just check
o'clock.
I'm just looking at the agenda right now.
Okay. Yeah, last time I
I
checked it
should
wasn't
know
posted.
because I posted it, but I can't remember. So
Okay.
I was too busy canceling stuff today.
Yeah.
And, right, and so that's the, we're presuming will be the date in which they will give their order of conditions or deciding on the order of conditions to be issued for the project moving forward. So yes, that is Wednesday.
Does anybody have anything that was not anticipated in the 24 hours prior to our meeting? If not, I entertain a motion to leave.
I make a motion, I make a motion, we adjourn.
Wait 1 second before that, just to make sure we are meeting next Monday. So just to be clear on that. So, do I hear a second?
A second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I think it's unanimous. I know it's unanimous. We are done at 7:09, 7:09.